it's funny talking about authenticity, and I immediately say, you know what, you should fake it. That's not very authentic. But there comes a time when you're faking it, that you're faking it good enough that you are turning into this person, and it's a lot of fun turning into this person you're trying to become. Right? There's that hill. You're climbing up this hill of learning this skill, and then you realize like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it, and it's fun.
Toast and Tea, where we have all the tea, tips, and stories, here to inspire you. Hosted by Little Norway's Toastmasters. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast, Toast and Tea. I'm the host for your first episode. To celebrate our first podcast, we have the pleasure of interviewing David Atkinson, a hardcore, loyal, and devoted member of Little Norway's Toastmaster for over 7 years. David rarely misses a meeting, even though he was given a considerable promotion at his job and is raising 2 little ones with his wife. He is our current outgoing president and VPE-elect. Every time he speaks, he inspires me to improve. By the way, my name is Shantia Curley. David, before we get into our topic of authenticity and finding your natural voice, can you tell us more about yourself and why you decided to join Little Norway's Toastmasters?
Yeah, of course. And this is a story I've told a lot, and that's what happens when you join Toastmasters is you do have that story of how you got into it. I was an engineer by training, and I was on a sales call with my boss, who was a just a natural born speaker, one of those purely charismatic people who can walk in and convince pretty much anyone to do anything, and they'll be happy about it. And so we're at the sales meeting. He gives the spiel on who we are as a company. And, I've heard him do it before, and he finishes, and right as he finishes, another guy enters the room, and this guy is our client's like boss. And so my boss turns to me and goes, "Hey, David, why don't you tell him all about us?" Essentially, he was saying, why don't you repeat exactly what I just said, what you've heard before, what I need you to be able to do in the future? And I fell flat on my face. We did not pick them up as a client, but I learned a valuable lesson that I need to work on this. And being an engineer by training, they don't really teach you this stuff. And even some of those classes you do in school, you're surrounded by your peers who are also giving the exact same kind of talks. You're surrounded by just a bunch of like-minded individuals on the same path, and it's not conducive to what you're doing in the real world. So a um it really was a eye-opening experience to try to apply these skills. So I knew I had to do something. I was talking to my brother, and I learned that he was a Toastmaster, and I learned a little bit more about the program because I was just suspicious of what it was, surprised that he would be a member of such a thing. And I remember attending one meeting. I got there early at Martha and Mary's in Poulsbo, and I actually got there during a leadership meeting, so I got to hear that side of it. And instantly I joined. That was it. And boy, yeah, 7 years ago, I've probably missed 5 or 6 meetings in the club since then. That's it. I know it's might be a little much, but Toastmasters has become a lot more than just a public speaking thing for me. So sure we'll get to that. But that's how I found myself in Toastmasters.
I remember I've heard this story many times, and yeah, I think I missed the part where you mentioned that your brother was the one who got you hooked onto it. And I think we've all noticed that, like, a lot of us find out about Toastmasters through word of mouth. I
Mhm.
actually, when I reached out to your club, there was actually someone who is in your club that I knew who was, I think, the VPM at the time, and that was Shawnee.
Oh yeah,
Pathway? Yeah. So we had actually taken coaching courses
that's
together, and it was just such a weird coincidence. I was like,
mhm.
I'd met her doing those courses, and we had chatted while we were on the ferry back from the courses from Seattle to Bainbridge. This must be a sign. I'm meant to be here. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, or that's why we're creating it for our club, because it'd be great to hear about these stories, to know that something like this existed. Because had we had known, we could have acquired these skills perhaps sooner. And like you said, while you're in school getting that education, it's not the same experience
Not
versus
at
like
all.
on the job, learning how
Not
to
at
speak to
all.
people. You fall on your face and you learn pretty quick. Whoa, I need to like hone in on these skills.
Yeah, talking to a lot of other engineers is a lot easier than talking to, I'll say, real people.
The engineer lingo.
Yeah, engineer lingo is totally different.
So David, what has striked me from day one is that you come off as just very comfortable with yourself. I know you've been working on it, but you make it look so easy at this
Oh, thank
point.
you. Thank you.
Like what helps you to just kind of like get into the zone and bring yourself to the table
Boy, that's a great
or
question.
to the lectern, more
Yeah,
accurately.
to the lectern. Nice. There's everyone's heard the phrase fake it till you make it. And honestly, that phrase means a lot to me. I had the mentors, and mentor maybe is a strong word, more maybe idol, someone I wanted to mimic, that kind of thing. And I saw what charisma looks like in people, and you see it in practice. And I said, I want to be like that. I want to be able to do that. And naturally, I'm a total homebody, introvert, rather not talk to anybody,
I
but
don't
knowing
believe
that
it. I don't believe it.
but knowing that, charisma gets you so far, and being able to explain things gets you so far. I knew it was a skill I had to have to progress in my career, that I decided I was going to figure out how to do that, and how I went from being an introvert to being perceived as charismatic, I'll say, is I just faked it. I just faked it. I said, what would a charismatic person do? What would they sound like? How would they act? There's a lot of smiling, there's a lot of eye contact you got to do. There's the active listening and using people's names, all these funny little tricks that you pick up from charismatic people by watching them and kind of taking some mental notes. And then you just start doing it, and you need to keep applying it to exercise that muscle, keep faking it until, sure enough, I've convinced people like you that I am indeed charismatic. So it worked.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because you talk about faking it, but I definitely don't get those fake vibes from you at all, which is why I wanted to do this topic of authenticity. I always feel
Yeah.
like you bring yourself. You're not trying to like force it. So what do you feel like is that balance between like projecting, forcing? How do you find that balance?
Oh no, that's a good question. And it's funny talking about authenticity, and I immediately say, you know what, you should fake it. That's not very authentic. But there comes a time when you're faking it, that you're faking it good enough that you are turning into this person, and it's a lot of fun turning into this person you're trying to become. Right? There's that hill. You're climbing up this hill of learning this skill, and you finally know the skill more than you don't know the skill. You're finally leaning towards the I am fine. The needle falls over to the charismatic side of the dial, and then you realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it, and it's fun. And I've really started to become the person I want to be. I've learned this skill, and exercising a skill and being good at a skill it's it's fun. We've all been there, I think. I think we've all started to master a skill. I don't want to use the term master about myself, but I feel good about where I'm at. And it's a lot of fun to feel good about where you're at. And so that's kind of where it started, is you have to fake it. And by fake it, you have to start climbing that hill. But eventually you're going to reach the top and start going down the other side of that hill, and you'll be who you want to be. And there's no greater feeling than that self-actualization of, you did it. You have actually changed to who you want. And it's neat. It's really neat.
So earlier you mentioned that you had people that you sort of imitated. Do you, off of the top of your head, could you share with us like some of those people who you're looking to imitate?
Yeah, you bet. And the first one is, I think, very, very obviously, is my boss at the time, which is Steve Strat. And he's just extremely charismatic in a field that is a mixed bag. I work in construction, and there's a lot of hard, rough, tough guys, and they don't people don't always take kindly to, I'll say, fancy talk or something. They don't always take kindly to talking like a nerd or something like that. And you have to connect with people, and you have to be authentic about it. and watching him connect. He'd be talking to the owner of the building 1 minute, talking to the general contractor another minute, and then talking to tradespeople the next minute, and all very different demographics and backgrounds. And every one of them he was connecting with on a really personal level. And so I studied him a good bit, and would watch how he would phrase things, watch how he would just connect with people, and said, that's pretty darn good. And then from there, you kind of just learn some of the building blocks, and then it's all just practice. You got to find your own style. I will not say I am like him, or yeah, I will not say I'm like him. I will say I learned some of his tricks, and figured out some of my own, and really, again, practice, practice, practice. And Toastmasters, I will say, is where I turn that practice up to 11. When I'm at a meeting, I'm definitely, I don't say bubbly, but I'm trying to turn that charisma all the way up.
Oh, that's so funny. I feel like you just answered one of my questions because one of my questions was, what is your secret to your energy? I always feel like you bring the energy to
It's
every meeting.
Well, Toastmasters, like a lot of things in life, you get out of it what you put into it, and you need to learn that. And so, if you're ever thinking, with anything in life, if you're sitting there ever thinking like, I'm not really putting much into this, or maybe you're thinking, boy, I'm not really getting a lot out of this, it's probably because you're not putting a lot into it. And being a father with a young family, my wife watches the kids much more than her fair share. And Toastmasters is the one night, every 2 weeks, that she gets it, says, go do your thing. And it's in my mind that I don't want to come home and say, I didn't really like the meeting, I didn't have fun. And because that's not fair. She's sacrificing a good bit. She's got a job, full-time job, a career, and helps out with the kids more than she ought to. And so when she sacrifices that time for me, that time and effort for me to go do this, because Toastmasters is, frankly, it's fun, it's a little therapeutic, and then there's the learning thing, of course. But I really make it my mission to have a good time. And you only, again, going back to, you get out of it what you put into it. I try to put a good time into it, and inevitably a good time comes out of it.
Yeah,
So,
no, I would agree. Like similar to me, I feel like you're a fan of it. You're a
yeah.
fan of like Toastmasters, the organization. You're a fan of the people who you were
Hmm.
there with. You're a fan of people whose speeches you've watched who are a part of different clubs. Like you're a genuine fan. So it's kind of interesting to see, like to hear what is the full circle motivation behind like what helps you to stay motivated and excited about it. Because even me, I was like, when I first showed up, I was just like,
It,
I'm not sure this
yeah,
is
it's
for me.
well, and I will say, when you joined, right, you joined in COVID, and that's a whole nother bit, right? Nonetheless, um, what keeps me really motivated is, now that I feel like I've gotten the skills where I want to be. Uh, one of my main goals, other than the charisma, was to be able to write a pretty good speech in a matter of minutes, and I feel like I've gotten that. Like, being able to wing it really, really well is what I wanted to be able to do. Because if you can wing it well enough, then I'm not a big proponent of the super practice speech where you worked hours and hours and hours and hours. I get why people like that. I get why that's important. That's not my goal. So what keeps me going, once I kind of got that skill to where I wanted it, was the people. The people, seeing people, frankly, like you, learning and growing and doing awesome things, and being like, oh my gosh, it's so cool to be a part of this. And getting new people in and helping them grow. And you never know where somebody's ceiling is. And every time you see them get better and better and better, and then you hear about successes that these people are getting because of the program, and it's really cool. Like Lucia, I remember when Lucia joined, and she was okay back then. She had some funny quirks that she has worked on and really, really done well for. And then, just, gosh, it was 2 weeks ago, she did a presentation in front of hundreds at a paid conference. Like, that's it. That's it. And when you do something like that, I know she felt great doing it. And it makes me happy knowing that things like other people are able to experience such things now because of the program, because of something I was a part of. And it just feels really good.
Oh, I feel like because you put in so much work into Toastmasters and you've learned how to fake it to it's coming off as like it's coming off as real. Like you really feel like you have these qualities and they're exuding from you so beautifully. Have you ever thought about expanding and exploring further into public speaking other than Toastmasters? Like, have you thought about what else you'd like to do with it?
Absolutely. So, I listen to podcasts, and podcasts being a part of one is cool, and like having your own would be neat. I've thought a lot about giving more public speeches and going out there, putting myself out there a little more. My time as I was MC for one of our conferences, and that was in front of several hundred people. And when you get a crowd that big, it's not the same. It's not as personal. It's a very different experience, but it was a ton of fun. I really, really like doing that. And I will always say yes to being the MC to pretty much any size crowd. And I had such a good time. Like, people get paid to do this, and that's really cool. And I think I might be good enough to get paid to do this. So that thought has definitely crossed my mind. What that would be, motivational speaking or whatever, I don't know. But I will say in my current profession, so working up as an engineer to a project manager and now to being one of the four owners of the company, I do use the skill. I don't want to say I get paid for it, but I do speak at company events. I do speak in front of everybody. I wear my silly Christmas suits at the company Christmas party and stand in front of everybody and their families talking about how we did for the year and that kind of thing. And so in a way I am using it professionally, but not quite like, the fun dream is getting paid purely to speaking fees to go to this conference or that conference. And that would be a lot of fun. I have thought about that. Maybe someday.
Yeah, I could definitely see you doing that because I just feel like it's sort of your gift or your talent, but you've also developed it as well. Like you've put so much work. I feel like you've squeezed as much as you could out of Toastmasters, like the experience of it, you've taken advantage of it. And as you're showcasing to us today, you've found a way to use it at your work. Like you use it. You use these skills over and over repetitively. So you're not just at the meetings every other Tuesday showing up and that's it. Like you're actually finding a way to expand your usage of the muscle, like building that muscle and making it a habit. I can see how you've been able to find your natural voice. You put a lot of work into it. There it
It's
is.
it's worth finding.
Mhm.
It's there's no time too late to start doing it. And there is no better feeling than being able to really express yourself. And it's sad to think that people go through life, as long as anybody does, not expressing themselves, right? Like it's kind of heartbreaking to think that people don't know how to do that, but then someday they do learn how to do that. And seeing that light shining from within and them expressing themselves and having fun doing it, it's a great feeling. It's great to watch. It's great to be a part of. So yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Okay, so I think we're gonna go ahead and just close out. On that note, thank you, David, for joining me for our first official episode.
Woo!
Yes, our first official episode for our podcast that I'll be uploading soon, shortly after.
I love it. That sounds great. Wow, it was a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week for another episode of our podcast.